Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly sync. I'm happy to be here. And today we're going to start our day with demos. And Alexandra and Michelle are going to go first.
Perfect. I can screen share now?
Yes, please take it away.
Oh, awesome. Okay, one moment. So, for our issue, oh, whoops, let me refresh the page here. For our issue, we had to allow users to join an existing token that is already in the database in Firestore. So to start this off, I'm going to head down to our form to begin, and where Ashel will explain what's going on here.
Okay, so in this form, we are returning the form tag or the form element. And inside of that, we have the input element. And as you can see, we've given it the relevant ID and also the type text. And we've also given it the value of join token because we want it to have the value of whatever is set in state of join token. It's also necessary for resetting the input back to an empty string when the user submits the form. And so we also have the placeholder for 3-word token, and our onChange property here has the value of our set join token function, which takes in the user input, and it is inside the onChange property because it listens to the input in real time, and it will then allow the user to edit the input if they want to, and set it as the state variable for join token. And if you want to talk about the onSubmit, Alex?
On submit, we will be activating or triggering the join existing token function, which begins here. And so when you click join an existing list, we have an if-else statement to check our edge cases, which the first one being if there's nothing entered, it will give us a React Hot Toast error of the shopping list token cannot be blank. And then following that, this one we've taken from the support of our mentors. It checks to see if it is parsed correctly with spaces. So it's saying if it has like more than the needed amount of spaces or not enough spaces, then an error will appear showing that, hey, your spacing is wrong. So for example, if I do like 1, 2, 3, obviously there's no spaces, you'll have that error appear. But if I even just space it like once, the error will still appear because we need 3. And if there's like 4 words here, it'll still appear because that's too many. And then even if there is 3, it'll go to our default else statement, which will then check if the shared token does exist in the database. So if I click 1, 2, 3, and I send that, it'll be the shopping list does not exist. And to explain this part of the function, we are importing our renamed function from Firebase that we created list exists to check if the join token submitted that is inputted into that imported function returns true. So if it does exist, returning true, then it'll navigate appropriately, and the saved shared token to the local storage and Firebase is what's inputted. So if I use, I should have had a test here, but if we use our basic my test list that we know works, it'll direct us to what we usually see when we create a new list. And yeah, and if it doesn't, then that list join error appears that I showed prior. And we do have a catch here in case there's an error that randomly appears from Firebase, which will input that we are unable to connect to the database for some reason. That being said, I am going to go to the API folder where our Firebase functionality exists, where a shell will continue for us.
Yeah, so in our Firebase API, we created our function list exists, taking in a parameter of list ID. And we've also created a reference to our collection. And with that, we are querying our reference for that collection. And that query or const queue is returning, I believe, a couple of data like metadata. There's also objects and properties inside of it. And our const query snapshot will then try to use our getDocs function because it wants to only retrieve the documents that exist within the collection. And in the query snapshot also has a property of empty. Empty will return a Boolean if documents exist in our collection, it will be true. But if it is empty, then it will be false. So that is what is returning on line 110. Yeah, and if there's anything else you want to add, Alice?
No, you explained it perfectly. I guess another route you could ask instead of empty that we both played with is dot size greater than 0. That also works. And yeah, that leads back to that's where our list exists is being pulled, which explains the rest of that functionality. But yeah, any questions?
No, excellent job and presentation, you guys.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for showing. So we also gonna demo
Well
the
done.
second issue. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, well done.
Oh, all right. So we're also gonna demo our second issue. Who is gonna be sharing the screen?
I'll share.
All right. Please take it away.
Okay, I'm on the right screen. Yes, I believe. The shopping list and the code side by side. Okay, cool. Sorry, I'm still learning on my second screen. All right, our issue was issue number 6, and basically we were adding a form, and that would kind of go along with the list of the shopping list items. So here, as you can see, under the list tab, we have taken the token, we've joined the list. This is my test list, and our job was to create this form. And as the user types into it, for example, cat, anything that matches would be there. Should they even try in caps, which I think that might be the bug. In caps or in lowercase, they should find. So for example, dog bone, right? It's still there. Okay. To get this, we did a couple of things. So if we're looking over here at the code, maybe I'll make this a little bigger. We had 2 separate things to track the list as well as the input, right? So the list of the was there, and we used a handler to change the state of the input and convert all items to lowercase. So regardless of what they typed, it would be able to read it and identify things. So we've got the set filter input and value, and it's list. Let's see. I don't want to say too much, but Sarah was kind of working this out, and then eventually, as we head down, we've got our form, and we've got some changes that we're tracking through. But I think this is kind of her baby, so I'll let Sarah take it away, and then we'll cover any bases we miss after that.
Randall, can you scroll back up to the top, and I can talk through the function? And so handle input, as soon as you start typing in a little filter box, it's going to set the filter input variable to whatever is in that box, or the filter input state to whatever's in that box, and then filtered list. It takes the full the full list of shopping items. And it will return in this filtered list. It gets the item names to lowercase that include the value of filter input. So what we noticed right before our meeting is that we had figured out how to do kind of get at the different bugs that people noticed in the review with the spacing and with uppercase and lowercase letters. But we realized that even when we're trying to type in all caps, it comes out in lowercase. And so that is something we're going to work on solving. But if you, Randall, go all the way down to the input form, we originally had input type as search because in some browsers that will automatically pop up a little clear button. But that didn't work in Firefox and some other browsers. And so we did a different approach of making it type text. And we added a value that wasn't here before so that the value of filter items matches the filter input. And because above filter input is put to lowercase, it's all put to lowercase in here. And then just a little extra, the reason that we needed to add the value is in line 42, where we added the button is if there is a filter input, that button pops up and when you click on the button, it goes to handle click. So Randall, can you go back up to handle click? Thank you. So we have, when you click on it, it will not refresh, but it sets the filter input back to null. And so that's what will clear out the filter box and allow the full list to display. And so I think what we're going to try and figure out is how to clear the input without, I had this in my head earlier, without like messing with the value or something like that. So we're playing around with a solution for that. Let's see, a couple other things that we are still working on from the feedback. One piece was having just a few more conditionals around what renders in the list. And so, for example, if this list had no items, I know one idea was to have like an alert pop up that there are no items in the list. The other is if we start typing things that are not in the list, that something would pop up that says it's not in the list. And there were a couple of other things in there. And then the final sort of thing we have that isn't yet in this code is if you go down to, Randall, just scroll down a little more. Let's see, starting in line 47 is pulling this conditional out into a separate function. So just that function, it would just be the function in the curly brackets, and the conditionals would be in that separate function out of there. Let's see, anything else, Randall?
Just to follow up, I think we have some specific questions around those conditionals, right? Using ternaries and how to return messages. And we were kind of discussing whether, like, would that be a hot toast thing? Would it just be a little paragraph that just says, hey, you know, nothing is in the item, and figuring out that little bit. I think we commented it out, the filter input, right, to see what would happen. So some things worked when you take that out. It lets us type in, it lets us again create spaces and type in caps. And right now, when we've done this, I think we're limited to only lowercase and note spacing. So a couple bugs to fix up there. But I think you got everything started, everything else in. So a lot more little pieces that we thought. That's what we thought we had it multiple times, and then oh shoot, there's even more.
We were very pleased with ourselves when we had solved this on my test list, but didn't realize it didn't work for any of the other lists. Right, so, right. But it works now.
Excellent job going through the challenges and figure things out.
Yeah.
And thank you also for addressing future improvements. It's always important to keep that in mind and make sure that you deliver as clean code as possible and without any bugs. I also want to give a special shout out to Sarah and Ashel for volunteering to do some cleanup in a database and to fix up some minor inconsistencies in the app. Thank you so very much for doing that. Kudos to you. Are there any questions about the demos? Anything you want to discuss before we move on to our learning module presented by DJ? All right.
I have a couple, I think it's just one question. When we want to make some of those additional changes, and I think kind of like what Ashel had done this week, we should create another branch, but do we need to go through the same review and pull request process as well? Okay, perfect, thanks.
Yes, just for the record, please do.
Yeah, and if you wanted to, I don't know, Volha, if you would recommend this, but it doesn't hurt to create separate issues too. Like we can, like this is our project, so you can say like issue whatever is beyond what we already have, and then just list what you need done. And that's a very common task, right? Day to day is like have your acceptance criteria, what needs to be done, and then everyone knows what's happening.
Yeah, sorry, I just now actually got to the point that I can talk on here. I'm outside of some ride at Disney World. Anyway, it's pretty common to walk into things where like the issue is more complicated than you thought, or you sort of thought of things that could be improved as you go. And it's really common to say like, okay, let's make sure to create an issue for it so that we can come back to it. You put all the context in, but your team may not come back to that immediately. And so it's important to make sure that you document it and have it something that you can refer back to when it's time to actually dig back into it. So I hope that makes sense.
Thanks.
For a second, I was like, who is in our meeting right now?
Did we get Zoom bombed?
Zoom bomber.
Hope you're having fun at Disney World. Way to flex on everybody today. All right. Here we go.
I never,
yeah.
If anybody ever wonders if I'm meaning to flex, the answer is no, I'm not. But sometimes it just happens.
Hey, man. It's fun. Volha, would you mind making me the host or allowing me to share my screen? All right. It's our favorite time of the week, everybody. Learning module. Here we go. So this week, you may or may not have seen that we're going to be talking about pair programming. So I think pair programming, you know, we've talked about it a little bit early on, right? We've shared our experiences about it. And I think this is something that's really core to the Collab Lab, right? It's like collaboration. This is like so important to what we do. And I think that, you know, throughout this program, like you're getting really, really valuable experience. I mean, I can still say from my perspective, like some of my favorite experiences pair programming were going through the Collab Lab. So today we're going to talk about it. We're going to kind of dig into, you know, kind of some best practices, some ideas maybe you can use moving forward, and then kind of talk about your experiences so far. Cool. So let's talk about, first and foremost, mindset and attitude. So whenever we're working with someone else, you know, I don't know if you've experienced this. I think it's a very vulnerable position to be in, right? You have two different people, different backgrounds, different skill sets probably. And, you know, when we're writing code and developing, like mistakes are going to happen, right? We're definitely going to run into things that we don't know. And that can definitely lead to some potentially uncomfortable, like kind of feelings, but that's totally normal. So whenever we're pairing, like it's really important that, you know, you find that middle ground. And it's more about, you know, having a growth mindset with each other, right? So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. So in general, right, having like a beginner's mindset is really important, right? So embracing doubt and possibility. Again, not having to know all the answers right off the bat is totally fine. Another thing to keep in mind is that pair programming is not really about teaching or mentorship. Like maybe sometimes you will encounter that in a job. Maybe you're working with like a more senior engineer. It can kind of turn into that. But generally speaking, again, it's just two people who are coming together to work on solving a problem. Again, definitely a big opportunity to learn, right? Every single time I pair program with someone, I always learn something, just whether it's how you write a function or, you know, how you approach a particular problem. It's really, really, there's just so many opportunities to learn, which is really cool. So we've kind of talked about this before, but kind of the two different roles that we have are the drivers and the navigators, right? So drivers, they're the ones who are kind of like, again, on the keyboard, writing the code. And really, I think the role there is to kind of find that like agreement between both people. Hey, is this what we want to do? Cool, let's go ahead and go forward with that. And then from the opposite side of that, being a navigator, right? I think we all probably have experienced like backseat drivers. I myself can be one sometimes. We don't want someone just telling us what to do, like go this way, stop, like turn, like whatever. It's more about like asking questions like, how can we do this? Or what do you think about doing it that way? Whatever. But again, just kind of having questions in mind is a good way to lead that. So this is something I'm totally unfamiliar with, but two people pair programming in person. I've never done this before, so I won't pretend to know what it's like. That's not true, actually. I've worked with friends before, but very informal. But yeah, this is definitely something you can do, right? If two people are sharing one computer or one keyboard, you're taking turns, that is definitely possible. And again, you still have your two roles, right? The driver who's actually writing the code is at the keyboard. Definitely talking through their process, talking about what they're writing out is really key here. And then the navigator, right, is kind of like the eyes. They're paying attention. They're kind of seeing what's coming up, like potential things that may need to be addressed pretty soon. And then also maybe like finding some answers to questions or challenges that are kind of coming down the road. So they kind of have the high level view, while the driver is more like in the weeds. They're like, thinking more low level. So again, that's kind of like in person. I think probably what we're all more familiar with, right, is pairing remotely, which definitely presents its own challenges, but again, it's still a really, really useful exercise, as I'm sure you're all really familiar with. So again, kind of the flow for this, right? A couple of people hop on a video or screen share call. Lots of different options here, but any way that's just like interactive is definitely the way to go here. But in this case, the driver would share their screen and the navigator is providing feedback and asking questions. And then, right, once some code is written up, driver pushes that code up to your repo, and then the navigator can kind of pull down. And then again, driver and navigator can actually swap roles. So that's a really important thing too. It's like, you don't want to always just be driving or always navigating. Even within one pairing session, it's totally normal to like switch off who's doing what. Maybe take like 15 minutes driving, 15 minutes navigating, or whatever you all decide to do. But you definitely want to get practice being on both sides of it. Cool. Any thoughts so far? Any questions? Anything jumping out?
I will just say, oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
Go
Randy.
ahead, go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
I will just say, I think from my understanding of paired programming, everything here I was doing, except for the part of like the roles, like I had the assumption that the driver is just listening to the navigator. And yes, there's like agreements to be made, but like the navigator is telling the driver where to go. So now I apologize to my prior partners who I misunderstood the assignment for that. So
No. Like again, it's a learning process, right? And it's easy to fall into that. And there's nothing like inherently wrong or bad about that. But yeah, I mean, just thinking about how to make it more collaborative, I think is definitely a goal that we can all work towards. So Randall, did you have a question or?
Just that the skill of pushing back, like there's things that in my head, I'm like, I don't know if that's right. And then after the mistake, I'm like, ah, shoot, like I am not trusting that I know more than I do.
Totally.
Little things. So I think it's hard to be like, I've only been doing this a few months. How could I possibly have the right answer to that? So it's definitely a process to learn how to do that a little bit, to ask a question or push back. And yeah, good reminders that it's conversation and not like dominance.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Cool. So let's just kind of maybe go around, maybe think about the last few weeks or other past experiences you've had. And yeah, just kind of talk about how this kind of setup maybe aligns with your pair programming experience so far. So it can be anything like, again, any thoughts that you have around this process. Feel free to
is-
just jump in. Yeah.
since I was, if you don't mind, since I was in in-person boot camp, in theory, they advertised pair programming, but in practice, nothing structured. So it ended up being more like, what did you do? Here's what I did, but no one's actually on the same project. So this is actually my first experience with two people focused on the same issue at the same time. So I've loved it. It's been different with all three folks, and I appreciate again different points of view. So yeah, I appreciate that this has more structure and more intention behind it. I'm learning a lot more because of it, by the way. So thank you.
I think it's mostly aligned pretty well with this, with what we've talked through here. I think everyone has done a really good job of sharing roles and saying, I'll do this part, now you can do this part. And I think that's been really good. I've noticed, and I think the only time that the roles seem to shift is when there is like something that we're both trying really hard to figure out how to solve. And so both of us will be searching and trying different things and kind of going back and forth, trying different solutions. And that I don't know if that's how like it's supposed to go, but that has seemed to work pretty well. And I know I've learned a lot from seeing how different people try to solve different things.
I'm just gonna go ahead and agree with Sarah on that because, for example, this week when me and Ashel were like working, we were doing pretty good, except until like we both weren't familiar with Firebase, so we were just really like a bit lost, and so we were both trying to figure it out, like, and it wasn't as structured as probably it would have been if we had some more familiarity with it. Yeah, but it worked out.
Yeah, I saw on that function for trying to see if a list exists, you had like 3 calls deep to get to that point. I was like counting it. I'm like, oh, that was probably actually kind of a challenge to get to that point. It's, it's one thing when you can find like one method and that's all you need, but when you got to chain them that many together, it gets a little trickier. I guess I was going to say that I've had similar experiences to what you've described, and I guess my theory is that when you hit that snag, like there's nothing really for the driver to do, unless it's like some kind of syntax thing, or they just don't know exactly how many things to give the function. Sometimes you run into that, but usually it's like, no, what do we do next? And everybody kind of needs to be a navigator and come up with some options at that point. So I've had a similar experience for sure.
Yeah, I think I'll pretty much echo what everyone has said. And I agree also with Alex saying that her idea of the navigator was initially different, and it was kind of the same for me. I thought that the navigator would just kind of like, hey, do this, do that, and the driver will just code whatever the navigator tells them to. But it's very insightful to learn today that it's a little bit more than that. And also just like pair programming experience in general so far in Collab Lab has been really nice, because I'm so used to working alone, especially coming from like a freelance background. It's always just me, so and I've never really kind of gravitate towards like collaboration, but I'm realizing that I actually really like collaborating with everybody, and it's really nice to just have different heads together working on the same thing. So yeah.
Yeah, and this isn't like totally related to like the app we're building, but I will say that like going through like job interview processes, a lot of times like one round of it will be some sort of pairing session. And, that's not to say that you'll always be pairing on your job, but your potential teammates will want to see what it is like working with you. So, if it's something that you're used to just like, again, writing code, not saying anything, not really talking it out, or like not asking questions, right, as you're going along, then like, that's something that folks could potentially notice. So I think that, again, this is just kind of a muscle, again, asking questions, not assuming that you know all the answers all the time, like embracing that doubt. I think that shows a lot to the folks that, you could be working with in the future. So just something to keep in mind.
Right, and to echo what everyone said and what DJ highlighted, in reality, when you are at work, you never work on you rarely work on isolated project, right? So there would be multiple developers, data scientists, and designers working on the same project on smaller tasks. So it's crucial to be able to communicate and be able to be on the same page with your teammates. So it's a really good skill to build.
Cool. All right. So of course, a bunch of links to check out. I don't know if anyone's like used like live share in VS Code. If y'all are familiar with that, it's nice. That's a really great tool. I don't know. I think that just enables a little bit more like interaction in kind of like a remote setting. But yeah, definitely check out some of these links for more information and to kind of dive in. So any last thoughts, questions about pair programming?
Actually, yeah. In any of your work experiences, is it structured? Is it just kind of like you two work on this project, or do people tend to do it in a formal way at work?
I can chime in. I was like, when I got hired in my job, I actually like really advocated for more pair programming. I was like, hey, like, there's a lot of heads down work happening, but I think it's something we should do. So yeah, it's like, we rotate people. Sometimes it's different teams, but it's like usually a session of like 45 minutes or an hour. And one of us will basically just kind of pick what we're working on, and then we'll just spend that time working together. So, it's not happening every day for sure, but I think that, yeah, as far as kind of having this kind of setup of like driver and navigator, definitely like we definitely try to keep that up.
The team I'm on is pretty small, and so I think when we pair, it's usually just because there's a really, really sticky thing that we're trying to figure out. And so it helps a lot to have more than one perspective, and to have someone like asking critical questions and or like, whether alternatives have been considered and things like that. So that's when we tend to use it.
Yeah, it's very similar to what everyone said. In my team, it's also not mandatory, but we do have a lot of interns and younger talent. So we tend to pay our program just for the experience, and also when we get stuck or need help, or if we feel lonely. All right, DJ, thank you so very much for the learning module. And what else we have on the agenda is our issues for this week. I think, okay, let me share my screen with you. All right, can everyone see issue 7? Perfect. Yeah. All right, so one of the issues this week would be to set up a welcoming prompt. So it sounds as a user, I want to see a welcoming prompt to add my first item if my list is empty, to help me to get oriented to how the app works. So there's an acceptance criteria and a summary, but essentially it's just a minor UI improvement to be more user-friendly for the users. I'll give you a second to read it through. Actually, a question. When we post issues before the call, do you ever get time to read through them, or is it mostly happening on the Zoom call?
In the beginning, I didn't get into the habit of reading them, but today I read prior to the call. Yeah.
Happy to see that. All right, wonderful. And our second issue would be, as a user, I want to mark an item on my shopping list as purchased so the app can learn how often I buy different items. And a few things to notice there, that you don't need to touch the date next purchased yet. That would be a part of later issues. And I can give you a heads up that this issue is going to be a little bit more challenging as the other one, simply because there would be a little bit more logic with a Firebase. So does anyone want to volunteer for issue number 8?
I like 8.
What was that, Alex?
I'm not the one who said that. Was that you,
Oh,
Sarah, or
okay. I
Michelle?
thought I saw your name.
Oh.
Was it
It was
I'm
a
Oh yeah,
down
sorry. I said I liked 8.
Yeah,
I would
Oh,
love
I'm
to
down
do
to
8 with
try it.
Michelle.
I haven't been in the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm happy to do 8 with Michelle. Well, I am paired
You
with
guys can do it then. Go ahead.
no argument here.
All right, wonderful. Then Alex and Randall, I will assign you to issue number 7. All good?
Great.
And as usual, read through the issues, start thinking about how you're gonna approach them, and if you need any help, pin us on Slack. We will be happy to make everything, to help you finish the issue. And I will be also posting pairing threads in Slack. All right, any last minute thoughts?
Wow, we have so much
Oh.
time left. There's 20 minutes left.
So with the stuff that Sarah and I wanted to keep working at, so would that be a new issue that we could like try to make time for, or what happens with the bugs we're trying to work out? Like,
I would say that you should concentrate on your issue at hand first, and if you
Right.
have some time, you can treat
Okay.
it as a kind of backlog, right? So if you're done with your
Okay.
issue for a week, you can start working on that. But the
Okay.
priority are the issues, the new ones.
Right. Yeah, okay. So in theory, it doesn't have to happen right away, but maybe down the road when there's time. Okay.
If y'all could, because I still want I want to understand what needs addressing as well. So just make a new issue in the project and just be
Okay.
like, this is what needs to be done. And then yeah, when there's time later down the road,
Okay.
we can address that.
It looks like
Yeah.
Sarah was actually addressed in issue 7 as well. Like a prompt that shows up if there's no
Oh, right. Yeah.
items. So that makes our list a little smaller.
Right.
Yeah. And that's also like, I don't know, there's called a term called scope creep, right? It's like if there's something that's not in the issue, it's like you don't have to bring stuff in necessarily, like stick to the issue and then we can always work on extensions later. So
Okay.
I don't know if this is a lot, but may I volunteer to, like, if I have the time to, I think I will be this week because I know we have the less Firestore type of problem this week. I would like to help y'all with that backlog because I think when I first saw it, I played around with it and I came up with my own version of a solution, but I wasn't sure if that was correct and I wasn't sure if it was my place to post that, so I didn't like do that, but like I'd like to problem solve with y'all for that.
Yeah,
That's
I did want to point out that Sarah, you did a really good job of explaining like the theory of where that problem came about. And I do remember like when I brought the thing up about the clear button, I think I said on the comment, like you'll have to take control of that value attribute. And right after I made the comment, I'm like, they might have some trouble because once they take control of it, they're going to own it. And it's going to become a little tricky.
I think it was
But
only us.
hey, you hit the nail on the head. Like you know exactly what to focus on. So that's great.
All right, seems like we have given you back an additional 20 minutes. Great job, everyone, and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks for all the support, folks.
Bye.
Ciao.
See you guys.